To date, there are 9 vestiges at Bimbia. You saw some of the vestiges on the video. These 9 vestiges are on this area approximated to be 56 hectares. It is it's a dense forest that has not been penetrated completely by people looking for these remains, and I believe that they are likely to also find other remains. But this has to be done very carefully by the local community, by experts, so as not to destroy any of the artifacts that remain. And some of the bricks that you saw on the film, I don't know if we got to that part, but with the local community, not only having social events and pilgrimages, although extremely important. We also work with experts in the area, and they were able to identify that some of the bricks they're obviously not African. The bricks that were used in some of the spaces, they were identified as being produced in Midland, England, since the 1500s. So who was involved in Cameroon and transatlantic slavery, and why this is important today? So as I try to unravel this suppressed and denied history, one, we know that the elders in Limbe and Bimbia knew. When someone went out to ask about Bimbia, what the elders said is, who is this person who wants to know? Why is she asking? And why is she asking questions no one has asked in over 100 years? That's telling. That's very telling. And then privately, people were coming up to me and saying, I've never said this to anyone outside of my family, but every 10 years we perform rituals for our uncle who went to the field and never came back, for our aunt who went to visit someone and just got lost. So it also was a release, I think, for people to be able to say what they were doing privately, knowing that they were not the only ones in pain. Omar was also in pain, and so many other people. So African communities were involved as resistors too, and we don't talk about resistance enough, and also victims of transatlantic slavery. When European enslavement ships got to Bimbia, Bimbia was not an empty land. It was populated by the Isubu community, and Bimbia was their home. European enslavers, their records tell us of acts of resistance by the Isubu against transatlantic slavery. Enslavers' records demonstrate that some Africans lost their lives resisting their capture, and some enslavers particularly feared the women. On record, based on a testimony from 1787, we see that crew from a ship from Bristol, England, says, and I'm quoting, "The black people on our landing were very riotous, but particularly the women. They began to pelt us with stones, fish, sand, and whatever they could collect, as well as tear by main force, the very clothes off of our backs. The captain was stripped. Stark naked. And it goes on. So the resistance is also there. And we need to unearth that resistance because nobody is going to tell that story but us. Women also, like men, they'd also physically attack European enslavers, as I just said, and European enslavement ships as a way to resist the capture and transport to foreign lands. Other ethnic communities were also involved as resistors to and victims of transatlantic slavery, especially based on their group size in the African diaspora, determined by the frequency of DNA test results. The other communities that were involved, the Tikar, having the highest frequency of DNA test results and hence the largest ethnic group among the Cameroon diaspora. Second, the Bamileke. Third, Hausa. After Hausa, Fulani, Massa, Iwando, Kotoko, and other ethnic groups as well, too many to name here. And these groups also included groups that are closer to the coast, like the Bakwere and Douala. But it's fair to say, based on the evidence, that most of the test results suggest that most of the enslaved came from the grass fields. In fact, no ethnic group was safe. And as a colleague says, there was terror across the land. Bangante stands out in this discussion because what we are told is that a Afan from Bangante was taken to Bimbia as he stood up to defend his people and said to Europeans, "You will take no more of my people into slavery." And the oral history says Bangante means we stand against slavery. Likewise, in an interview I did with an Iwando chief, revealed that Iwandos over time realized they were being deceived by Europeans. In the interview, the chief said, the Europeans, he said, we thought that they were our friends. They took our children, promised to take them to school in Europe. Who would not want their children to be educated? They promised to take them to school and then bring them back home. But they never came back. So we know, we felt it, he lamented. And when I asked, well, why doesn't your community, why don't you talk about what happened? He looked at me and he said, but why would we talk about something so painful? And we, in the diaspora, like Omar, we want that conversation to happen. We need that conversation to happen. We need to know that that connection was not forgotten.